Hey, how's it going, guys? It's Nate here, and welcome to the city of stone and blood, the ancient capital of the Reach, Markarth. Perhaps the most unique and tumultuous settlement in Skyrim, it is here that many claim the land's civil war truly began. And even if you ignore the Stormcloaks and the Imperials, officials in Markarth have long been jockeying with the horrifying forces of the Forsworn. A brutal and barbaric clan of Breton rebels who desire to conquer the Reach and turn it into their own independent kingdom. The Forsworn have destroyed trade and commerce in the city and have the entire population on edge, as rumors of their Daedra worship and human sacrifice skate across the marble streets. Uneasy citizens, corrupt leadership, and mysterious dwarven origins define Markarth as a location in the Elder Scrolls V. And you better believe there's quite a bit about this ancient series of rocks that the game and its characters have made an effort to hide. So today we'll be taking a look at 5 things they never told you about the city of Markarth in the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. Starting off, today's video is actually going to begin not in the Reach, but instead the hold of Hoffingar in the small town of Dragonsbridge. It's at this quiet little hamlet where players can meet a Redguard man named Azada Lilaviv and his small family. Azada at first doesn't seem like an especially remarkable character, but he's quite relevant to today's topic. You see, speak with the father, and he'll reveal that he in fact was born and raised in Markarth. Well, perhaps raised is too generous of a word. Evidently, the man grew up without a family and lived on the streets for many years in horrible poverty. It wasn't until he was found by a particularly benevolent priest of Boethia named Logrolf the Bent, who was able to scrounge together enough coin to help Azada escape the city and begin a new life elsewhere, so he claims. It didn't take long for Azada to meet his wife and settle down here in Dragon's Reach, building a new home and beginning a new, better life. The Redguard states he owes everything to Logrolf, and to this day writes to him frequently. Okay, so what's so interesting about this little story? Sure, Azada's made an awesome turnaround and whatever, but what makes this all stand out so much for the purposes of a video like this? Well, let's talk a little bit about the Markarth side quest, House of Horrors. This is a really interesting mission that begins after we spot a vigilant of Stendar, named Tyrannus, standing outside of an abandoned house. Mr. Tyrannus claims that the home is possessed by an unknown evil entity, and he's looking for someone to join him in investigating it, promising some coin. If we take him up on this offer and explore it, it will quickly be revealed that the house isn't possessed just by any ordinary entity, but by the Daedric god of domination, Molag Bal himself. An actual god. This is far more than either of you were prepared for. Tyrannus will soon be killed, and Molag will summon you down to a shrine beneath the house, where he'll make the Dovahkiin an offer. Normally, he'd just murder you to death, but apparently, recently, a priest of Boethia has recently been desecrating one of his shrines and mocking him. The man was recently kidnapped by some Forsworn raiders, and Molag will ask that the Dovahkiin go fetch the man and bring him back to his shrine so he can steal his soul. In exchange, the god promises to let you go and a small reward. Sure enough, head to the Forsworn camp to go get Boethia's priest, and you'll discover that his name is Logrolf the Willful. Oh my, this is the very same priest Azada was talking about. It's him, the dude who took him off the streets. Now, Azada refers to Logrolf not as the Willful, but to him as Logrolf the Bent. However, it's worth noting that Bent literally means the same thing as Willful in this context. They are absolutely the same person. Sadly, poor Logrolf, who despite evidently being a great man who selflessly rescued Azada from poverty, will meet a cruel fate when we return him to Molag Bal, and he's killed and soul-trapped. Now, just in case you have any doubts, when Azada and his wife Michelle are together, the two may have the following conversation, where they seem to allude to Logrolf's unfortunate relationship with Molag Bal.
Did you read that letter from Markarth yet?
Yes, just this morning. It was from Logrolf. He wrote to thank us for the food we sent.
And how is that old warrior doing these days?
Not well. He's convinced that his house is haunted, so he's sleeping on the street.
Oh dear. I wish there was something we could do to help him.
As do I. That man saved my life. I hope that someone helps him, as he once helped me.
Next on our list, let's talk a bit about Markarth's history, as it's a bit complicated. Markarth first appeared in the Elder Scrolls franchise in the Elder Scrolls I arena, where it was but a mere village known as Markarth's Side. That was actually quite a bit north of the location we now know it in today. Markarth's Side in Arena also wasn't some unique stone-cut dwarven city. No, it was just another wooden, ordinary village, with little of much significance going on. It's not really until the release of the Elder Scrolls Adventures Redguard, 4 years later in 1998, when Bethesda really begins to point out Markarth as a distinct settlement in the Elder Scrolls' lore, as the city was mentioned extensively in a booklet that came with physical copies of the game, called The Pocket Guide to the Empire. And even then, this booklet makes little mention of the town's unique dwarven character, only referring to it really as the Reach's capital. Skyrim's the only game that truly offers us a definitive history of the settlement, and it totally contradicts what we saw in Arena and read about in Redguard. Bethesda effectively just retconned and rewrote the town's history. According to the new lore introduced by Skyrim, and some later by ESO, Markarth was originally founded as the dwarven city of Nichuan Zel. It was an independent city-state that participated heavily in a Dwemer-wide project to mine and temper a mysterious resource known as Ethereum thousands of years ago in the First Era. Eventually, Dwemer efforts to work with Ethereum broke down, and nearly the entire race went to war with each other over the failed project. And while Nichuan Zel did manage to survive, it was greatly weakened, and soon after the war, it was conquered by the Nordic king of Skyrim, Geller, sometime in the mid-First Era. For many years after, it was occupied by Jarls loyal to Skyrim, until the assassination of High King Logrolf in 431 of the Second Era, after which it fell into the hands of barbaric Reachmen, the predecessors to the Forsworn, who took over the city and ruled it as their own kingdom. Over the next few decades, these barbarians ruled over Markarth as tyrants. The king was known as the Despot of Markarth, and he was an active worshipper of Daedra, and connected to many famous necromancers, such as Mannimarco himself. Eventually, in the late Second Era, Tiber Septim would enter the picture, and conquer Markarth as well as the rest of Tamriel, and annex the city into his province of Skyrim, where it's mostly remained ever since. I say mostly because during the Empire's Great War with the Aldemari Dominion, it was briefly retaken by the Forsworn for like 2 years, but eventually Ulfric and the Empire scared them away. Anyway, this history tells us a lot about the City of Stone today. It explains why even now, in the Fourth Era, there's such a large Daedra-worshipping successionist movement, and it's provided a reason for how the city received its trademark architecture. It's now a far cry from the tiny village of Markarth's Side we saw in Arena, and I'd say that it's changed, largely for the better. Coming in at number 3, Calcell Mo is an elderly Altmer conjurer who set up practice in Markarth's Understone Keep, and is notably Skyrim's premier dwarven researcher. He spent the last few years relentlessly excavating parts of Markarth's ruins, digging up all sorts of ancient Dwemer artifacts and studying the city's history. The Jarl and Markarth's ruling elite have largely just given Calcell Mo free reign to study whatever he pleases. They pay him a salary, give him a place to live, and even provide him with an entire cohort of guards to keep him and his research safe. These endless resources and an already extensive knowledge of the dwarves have allowed Calcell Mo to quickly become the world's forefront authority on the ancient deep folk. Anyway, within Calcell Mo's personal quarters, players can find a fascinating artifact he discovered deep in Markarth's ruins. A strange two-sided stone with a different inscription on each side. One is a paragraph in Dwarven, and the other inscription is a paragraph written in the Falmer language. Both are actually the same paragraph, they're just written in 2 different languages. Now, during the Thieves Guild questline, when we have to translate sections of a notebook written in Falmer, we'll indeed have to visit this stone, and use it to help us decipher the text of the notebook. However, we never get to find out what this stone itself actually says. The game never tells us. Well, thankfully, some people within the community got to work trying to break the code themselves. And believe it or not, it wasn't really all that hard. The Falmer's written language is incredibly similar to that of the Aelids, another ancient elven civilizations, which we don't totally understand, but we do have a lot of information about. And using what we know of Aeliad, we've been able to translate the Falmer script, and this is what it says in English. Quote, "And so it was that your people were given passage to our steam gardens, and the protections of our power. Many of your people had perished under the roaring, snow-throated kings of Etmora, and your wills were broken, and we heard you, and sent our machines against your enemies, to thereby take you under. Only by the grace of the Dwemer did your culture survive, and only by the 15-in-1 tones did your new lives begin. We do not desire thanks, for we do not believe in it. We do not ask for gratitude, for we do not believe in it. We only request you partake of the symbol of our bond, the fruit of the stones around us. And as your vision clouds, as the darkness sets in, fear not. Know only our mercy and the radiance of our affection, which unbinds your bones to the earth before, and sets your final path to the music of your new eternity." End quote. This appears to be a paragraph written by the dwarves dedicated to the Falmer, or Snow Elves, just before they famously took them in to protect them from their Nordic conquerors in the Merethic era. We all know the old story. Back in the Merethic era, Nords invaded from Atmora and drove the Snow Elves almost into extinction. In desperation, they begged the dwarves to take them into their underground cities. The Dwemer agreed, under the condition that the Snow Elves would eat a strange fungus and blind themselves. This seems to be what this paragraph is talking about. However, it also introduces a number of new concepts. Multiple times the paragraph references what we call tonal magic. Basically magic that travels through sound in a way. The dwarves mention the 15-in-1 tones. They talk about unbinding bones from the earth and setting people's final path to a quote-unquote music of new eternity. We don't quite understand exactly how the dwarves were using tonal magic, but it's clear they were embracing it. And while we've always known that the dwarves fed the Falmer some strange fungus to make them go blind, nowhere else in Skyrim is tonal magic ever really referenced in this relationship, so this is totally new. At the end of the day though, unfortunately, we still don't quite understand why the Dwemer wanted the Falmer to eat that fungus. Did they want an army of goblin slaves? Were they trying to bring the Falmer with them wherever they went? We're unsure. At the end of the day, it's a mystery that only the dwarves knew, and the dwarves are all gone. For fourth spot, many times before on this channel, I've talked about Skyrim Civil War, and how quite a lot of content was cut from it before Skyrim's official release. Originally, the Civil War was supposed to be a much larger scale affair, where the player was afforded considerably more control over how everything went. You would be able to lose battles, recruit giants, recruit more soldiers, lead raids. It was insane what Bethesda had planned. Unfortunately, so much of it got scrapped. Well, amongst all of that scrapped content, Bethesda had also intended for players to have large-scale siege battles at every single hold capital. Normally, Skyrim Civil War only affords us 3 sieges, the Battle of Whiterun, and a following siege at either Solitude or Windhelm, depending on which side you joined with. But there were going to be sieges everywhere, at Riften, Winterhold, Falkreath, all over the place, and Markarth was not the exception. The Battle of Markarth, if you sided with the Stormcloaks, would have been just as big, if not bigger than the Battle of Whiterun. It would have started with a valiant speech by Galmar Stonefist before you charged the city's gates. After overrunning the defenders, you'd have to force the Jarl and his entourage to submit and surrender the city. And afterwards, an incredible exchange would occur between Galmar Stonefist and Ondolamar, the city's Thalmor ambassador. Take a listen.
Come, Galmar. We have much to do. The The Empire will return. Count on it.
Not so fast, Elf.
I presume you're talking to me.
On your knees. I said, on your knees, Elf.
Enjoy this while you can. Soon you will all be slaves.
Someone get that thing out of here and burn it.
Even more incredible is the fact that if the player sided with the Empire during this now cut version of Skyrim Civil War, it would have been possible for the Stormcloaks to capture Markarth for themselves. If that happened, the Empire would eventually have to siege Markarth too, and you would get to listen to another speech, this time by Legate Rika, and have to storm the gates all over again. It's insane. Sadly, this is a version of Skyrim's Great Conflict that we never got to see, but it is interesting to know what Bethesda originally had in mind for this great jockey for power. And finally, last on our list, Markarth's largest general goods store is known as Arnleif & Sons Trading Company. Curiously, it's owned and operated not by a man named Arnleif, but his widowed wife, Lisbeth. Apparently, while it was founded by a Nord named Arnleif, at some point in time he mysteriously disappeared, vanished. Most assume it was due to a Forsworn attack, and sadly, his wife had to take over the operation. She's been running things smoothly ever since, and overall seems to be a genuinely kind, polite, and courteous character. She'll offer us a brief quest to go recover an old statue of Dibella that was recently stolen from her by those pesky Forsworn bandits. Overall, she looks to be a good character. But looks, well, they can be a bit deceiving sometimes. Namira's Daedric quest, The Taste of Death, reveals that Markarth is actually home to a small cult of cannibals who worship the Daedric god. During the mission, we'll have to help Namira's followers clear out an old Nordic ruin so they can have a cannibalistic feast over there. It's terrifying. Well, after that dungeon's been cleared out and we attend the feast, amongst the guests, we'll find none other than Lisbeth. Yeah, she's a cannibal Namira worshipper too. Even more horrifying, when spoken to, Lisbeth will say this regarding her husband.
Did you know I inherited the store from my late husband? Shame what happened to him. He had such good taste.
Oh my, Arnleif wasn't killed by the Forsworn or something. No, he was eaten to death. And Lisbeth isn't alone in her company. Also attending the feast will be Hogni Redarm, the city's resident butcher and meat vendor, as well as Banning, the town's dog salesman. It's a terrifying conglomeration of seemingly otherwise good people. Oh man, I guess at the end of the day, some people in this city have quite a few skeletons in their closet. Or refrigerator, I suppose. And with that, we are going to wrap up 5 things they never told you about the great stone city of Markarth in The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. Thanks so much for stopping by, everybody. Which of these tiny details or Easter eggs did you find to be the most fascinating? And what bits and pieces of Skyrim, or heck, any other game trivia, do you know of that I haven't tackled yet? Leave a comment down below. Seriously, I really appreciate the suggestions. Anyway, thanks again for watching, and hope to catch you all in my next video. Peace out, everyone.